remember leaving my body and going from this just horrible chaos and just terror through this opening. People call it a tunnel. It's actually a portal. And going through this to the other side. A lot of people are afraid of death. There is no death. We just continue, we transition, and we continue in a different way. Don't be afraid of death, because we do not die. We transition.
We are here with Althea Watson, and she has experienced 2 NDEs, several STEs, including also several shared death experiences.
I'm a survivor of abuse that went on for years. And during one of these episodes that just erupted and became violent, I died. And I remember leaving my body and going from this just horrible chaos and just terror through this opening. People call it a tunnel. It's actually a portal. And going through this to the other side where, oh my God, the magnificence, to be filled with so much love, to feel safe, to feel secure. And even though I was only 7, and so I was limited in life experience and in vocabulary, I wasn't in my physical body with my human mind. I was my origin, which is spirit, which is a frequency, it's vibration, which is love. And with that comes all the wisdom and knowledge of being an aspect of consciousness. So I understood what had happened to me, except I needed the life review to really understand how all the abuse came together and unfolded. What happens when we go over, when we don't have our human mind to limit us or our body? We're aspects of consciousness. So we know. We have the wisdom of our origin, which is spirit, which is part of consciousness. So we do know. What we need the life review for is to connect the dots on the understanding of what we went through as a human on the earth plane. And you see, on the other side, there's no time. We don't have persona. We don't have all those aspects of personality. We just exist. And we exist as this frequency of love. And so we come to the earth plane, and we have all these social mores that we're taught, that we take this in and it gives us a direction and it starts to develop our character. But we do come in with characteristics, and we do come in with a plan, and we do come in with a path.
Would you say that when you came back transformed? And
oh, absolutely. My whole life has been about figuring out all the things that I was told during this first NDE. I came back seeing spirit. I came back telepathic. I came back seeing auras, so I was clairvoyant. And then my mother, she, and I'm going to be talking about her later too, because she is who I shared with her when she transcended. But we were afterwards, she was aware that I saw spirit and could read spirit. And we were working with the Ouija board one day, and I was like 8 years old, I think. And all of a sudden the lights dimmed and the room got really heavy. And she went, "What just happened?" And I said, "Well, the lights dimmed, it's really heavy, and you have this very dark mass of energy standing right next to you." And she was quiet. She leaned forward and she goes, "We're going to put this away now, and we're never going to use it again." And we did. We never used it again. My sister had been with us. The 3 of us had been at the Ouija board, and my sister had left. She went off to do something else. And I had people around me that when I came back to the earth plane, I told one of my friends, I said, "I could talk to dead people and I saw God." And they were like, they just looked at me. And she got her other friend. And I said, "Oh, I just told her that I get to see dead people and I talk to God." And they didn't say anything, and they turned and left, and I lost all my friends. And I went back and I said, oh, it was just a bad joke. I'm really sorry. They just, it was like, no, no, that just sealed the deal. Well, aside from seeing out of body spirit, I also saw aliens and entities. And I had this whole notebook of UFOs and aliens and underground passages. And I tried to find this notebook and it was gone. And my mother came into my room and I was like, where's my notebook? And she said, oh, yeah, no, you can't go there. None of that's real. Just forget about it. Just forget about it. And she turns and then she turns back and she goes, stay away from them because they will hurt you. And she started crying. So I also realized that our whole family had been abducted. Aliens do that. In my research through the years, what I've started to see is if one person in a family has an abduction experience, most likely other people in that family will. And I don't know how it started. I never spoke about it to my sister or my brother or my father because my mother was like, don't, it will just, just don't go there. And it was so profound and I didn't understand it, but they were friendly to me. I didn't feel any pain. And my mother just said, no, it's that you don't remember the pain. And I went, oh, okay. She was like the voice of reason and the teacher for me with some of this. So I understood and I went on. But one thing that I learned that was just so amazing is reincarnation is real. Now, my father's side of the family had been Christian missionaries, and we were a very religious family. God was very important to me as a child and to both my parents. And all of a sudden in the life review, it's like, so you incarnated with this man and you said that you would be in this relationship so to teach each other about violence and compassion and forgiveness and letting go. What? Reincarnation is real. And we have tribes. Now, we don't always incarnate with all of our tribe. It's a huge group of people. Consciousness is beyond what I can comprehend as a number, and how it all changes is endless. But so we have this huge tribe. Some of them stay on the other side, and then we choose our parents. We really do. We choose our path. We choose certain personality characteristics. We choose what some of our lessons will be. We choose where we're going to be, and boom, we incarnate. Not all of our tribe is with us. We might have someone in Australia or Nova Scotia or the Bahamas or Ireland or Wales or, South America, and they're part of our tribe, and we never meet them. But we have collective lessons. If you've ever had this experience, well, all of a sudden you go, whoa, something just lifted. All of a sudden, God, my eyesight is better. I have much more mobility and more motility. What's going on here? We won't know it. We just have to take note of it. But often that's an experience of our tribe resolving some sort of issue that we carried, and we can let go as a collective of that energy. Wow. And there are times where if you're ever like you see someone in a crowd and someone just their energetic stands out and you go, whoa, and you never meet them, but you'd like to, or you see a light around them or an aura and you're not used to seeing them, but you go, whoa, something draws me to them. That's a soul connection. You won't ever talk to them. You might even like go, where? I've got to find them. Where are they? Where are they in this group? And you won't find them because you're not supposed to in this life. My second NDE, I had surgery and I had a hernia operation and I had trouble walking for a very long time. And I finally went now. I had been at a theater all summer that was like a star package theater. And I just was like, I was getting agitated all the time because I was always in pain. So I thought, let me just have this surgery. So I was in college at the time. So I went in like a couple semesters later, a semester and a half late from the surgery. And I went out during the surgery. I woke up and my mother was sitting by the bed, and I woke up, I opened my eyes, and she burst into tears and she said, "The doctor said he lost you." She just cried. And I was like, okay. Well, I was twofold with my experience. I was at peace, and then I was furious. I had the fury that I had never felt before. Uh, and I went back and forth with these two feelings. And a lot of people, when they're in surgery, they'll leave their body and they'll look down and they'll see the surgeons and they'll know the conversation. I didn't. I went into just total blackness. It was black. Now, where I had the choice in my first NDE of staying on the other side or going back, and I said on my first one, pardon me, I said, I miss my mom and my dog, and bam, I was back in my body. Well, part of that is I was still connected. I was still attached to the earth plane. So they weren't going to let me stay. It's when we can let go that we stay and go to the other side. On this one, I was like, I'm not going back. And they were like, oh, yeah, yeah. Because to be in the, and I was more in blackness than in anything. And it's because what the other side is our origin, which is love. I wasn't in that place of Holy Spirit. I wasn't in that place of love. I was angry. I was angry at my own behavior. And this is something I figured out later. This didn't come to me during the life review, but I was angry because I had missed so much in my life because of the abuse and the limitations on my character. I had understanding of why things were happening, but they still happened. I still got bullied. I still had rocks thrown at me. I still was dragged to a basement and molested by people in my class. I mean, and it goes on and on. And so my frustration of, well, shouldn't it stop if I understand it? It's like, no, and no, because you have all these other issues to align with. So I was sent back. I was in the hospital for a week. A hernia operation is generally an outpatient operation, but I was in the hospital for a week, and then it took me like a year to feel the right side of my body, for all the nerves that were cut to heal. I couldn't feel anything. I had no sensation on the entire right side of my body except down by my ankle and my right arm. And so that was my second NDE. A lot of what I learned during that was stayed unconscious. And it was really about, I have to go back, I have to process, I have to get back to that source of love that I had as a child. And again, it was about understanding that we are frequency and that we create our world through our mind. We create our circumstances. If I was agitated about the world, I'm blaming them, but I had to really look at myself and find out what the blame is. What's the real foundation of my anger, my sorrow, my resentment, my jealousy? I had to look at all that and let go of that and to process that. And that all came after I came back. That's one reason why I was sent back. So but I still, my calling always has been to be in the light and graces of God, that magnificent love, and to have understanding of what the construct of this universe is. When I was a child, my mother had said to me, "Will you be with me when I transcend?" And I was like 12. I was like, yeah, okay. I didn't really know what that meant. Transcend, you're my mother. You're going to always be here because you're my mother. I didn't really think of it. I came back from death, so you won't die either. And you know, but I was with her when she was 97 years old, and she said to me 2 months before her 98th birthday, my dad showed up and he's talking to me, and he's going to be there to take me to the other side. And at different times over the next 2 months, she would say, I talked to daddy again. I talked to dad, I talked to papa. And then she had other people that she she would bring up that she had talked to. And so I knew, but I didn't really connect the dots. I just thought, okay, so she's working as a medium just like me. Okay. But then on the way she went into hospice when she was 97, right before her 98th birthday. And you can live like 3 days without water and 5 days without food generally. After that, you transcend. Well, my mother had been 8 days without water and like 9 days without food. And the doctors were like, "Are you feeding her when you come to visit her?" And I'm like, "No, she won't eat. She used to do ice chips, but she hasn't done ice chips in several days." And they're like, "We don't understand why your mother's still alive." And I said, "She's probably hanging on so she gets to her 98th birthday." And they were like, "Oh, sure, okay." They were like, "But the facts, the statistics don't add up." So I was on my way to see her on her 98th birthday, and one of my guides said to me, "She won't speak to you and she won't open her eyes, but she is waiting for you and she won't leave till after you get there." And I was like, "What do you mean leave? She can't walk. She's in hospice. She's not going anywhere." It didn't occur to me that my guides were saying she's transcending. I couldn't connect the dots on it. So I get to the facility and I buy coffee because I always take her coffee, whether she can drink it or not, because we used to drink coffee together. And her eyes are closed and she's still, but she's got color in her cheeks and in her lips. And I put my hand on her arm and she's warm. And I go, okay, I don't really see movement in her chest, but then I saw a little movement. So I go, okay, she's just very deep in something. Let me just sing happy birthday and wake her up. So I sang happy birthday really loudly and started reading birthday cards to her. And at one point, I all of a sudden felt someone standing next to me. And I didn't want to turn and see a person. I didn't want to share my time with my mother because I was starting to get the sense that this would be the last day I would be with her. And I look at my mother and I see the color leaving her face, but more prominently, the color leaving her lips. And what happens when you die is your spirit will leave, and a few minutes later, the color starts to drain. I put my hand on her arm, and her body temperature had changed. It was a little bit cooler. So I looked to my right, and who is standing there isn't a person, but I could feel them as if they were a person. It was my mother. She had left her body, and she was standing right next to me. And I saw her as a gray mist, and I think it was because so I could identify her with that I could identify her with all the white walls that were there. And we just sat, she stood there and I sat there and we just kind of resonated together. I had nothing on my mind. I didn't say, "Oh, I'm going to miss you," or, "Oh," she didn't say, "Oh, I'm going to miss you." We just were in this place of being together. And then she moved across the room. And what I noticed is when she moved across the room, I looked at the room. The room looked extended. It looked a lot bigger. So my vision had started to, as if I was going into a trance state, which I work in a lot, especially as a medium. And the color in the room, the glow in the room had started to change. It had started to become like this lovely white, gold, orange color. And I didn't have anyone say anything to me, but I just got up and I went to the nurse and I said, my mother has transcended. She's passed. And the nurse went, "No, she hasn't." I'm like, "Yeah, she has." She said, "I was just there. I just like took her vitals. She's fine." I said, "No, she's not." Well, the nurse like ran around me into the room, and I go into the room and she's got her hand on my mother's shoulder and she's like, "Barbara, Barbara, happy birthday, Barbara. Barbara, talk to me. And then she just stood there, and she liked my mother a lot. She and my mother would joke around a lot, and my mother had been in this facility for a while as her, time was coming to an end. And the nurse like left and came back with all these. Oh, she used a stethoscope, and she used like to try to get a pulse on my mother. And she just stood there, and then she went running out of the room and came back with these machines and hooked my mother up to these machines to try to get a pulse. I'm like, she's transcended. And the nurse was like, she just like took everything off, and she just stood there. And then she said, I have to go make some phone calls. And she left. And I thought, she really cared about my mother. She just, I mean, this is like a friend discovering that someone has transcended. She wasn't like, it was almost like I thought that in that moment of silence, she was saying a prayer. Um, so she left the room. And after she left the room, the temperature changed. It became so warm. And the portal, which we call the tunnel, opened, and my grandfather comes out. But not only my grandfather, oh my God, it was a party. I never knew so many people would come to take her back to the other side. It was just illuminating, and the colors in the room, excuse me, the colors in the room were so lovely: orange, whites, yellows. I hadn't told you this, and I want to bring it up because it's about our tribe that we're in. When I was about 12, I was with my mother at the grocery store, and this woman comes over to my mother and goes, I want to thank you. You saved my husband's life. He felt that you healed him more than the doctors. Well, my mother had been a nurse in the Navy during World War II. She was a lieutenant. And then she was a nurse at Evanston Hospital. And that's where this woman had been. When this woman looked at me, I saw her eyes and our souls met, but I saw her as energy. I could not tell you how tall she was, what her body looked like. I just saw her as frequency. And she and my mother talked, and I was in my own mind going, what's going on with my vision? What is this about? Because I forget, below the earth plane, you forget sometimes, you're separate sometimes from what it is to be with our origin of spirit. But I kind of, collected myself and my memories. And when the woman left, I turned to my mother and I said, do you remember her? She said, no, not a clue. Not a clue. And then she said, and I don't know who her husband is either. That woman was in the celebration of my mother's life to go back through the tunnel. I was floored. She's part of the tribe. This is why my mother, I believe, asked me to be with her when she transcended. It was to understand that this was part of the collective of the tribe. My mother and I were of the same tribe, and we had other lives together. This woman from the grocery store is part of our tribe, and that was our interaction. And it was the most amazing. There was a horse there, and I know my mother, I'd seen a lot of pictures of her with a horse because she loved horses. And so I think that this maybe was a horse that she communed with. And it was like, if you're ever out at night and you're with friends and they'll like flash a light and then hide it. And so you see the light. Well, that what was going on, but not with a light, but with the picture of what the people looked like as a human. Like my mother grew up with this woman named Connie. That was her best friend. And so I saw some pictures of Connie growing up. And so I had a flash of Connie. So I knew Connie was there. My Aunt Betty, which was my mother's sister, was there. And then there were a whole lot of people that flashed that they were in the Navy. They were in uniform. And so I thought, well, these were people she was in the war with. And it was just the most extraordinary experience. I've had people tell me that they will come and get me when it's my time to go. And I've always known that we have escort, and I've known that we were prepared, just like my my grandfather prepared my mom. But I never knew it was like such a celebration for the transition. But it was the most joyful, deep spiritual love and excitement of a journey that is done. And let's get to the next chapter of the new book. And they all ended up going through the portal, the tunnel to the other side. And I remember my mother just turning and looking at me and smiling and going. And I was left with this resonance of silence and peace, such a deep peace. And that love that we feel when we are on the other side, they brought it with them. That was such a moment of heaven on earth, because that's where they were going. And they were all going back to really their origin, which is aspects of consciousness. And I just sat there until the funeral director came with his assistant, and I left the room so they could take care of the body. And my mother stayed around for like the year. She said she would be going over and that she would come back for a while and visit me and be with my sister. At that point, my brother was deceased. So he, she didn't visit him. But that happens. It's like people go over and they start to get their life review. I don't know if they go and finish all of it or not, but often people come back for their memorial service, for their funeral, to check on people, to see how they are. And my mother spent like about a year tuning in and out with me. And then she said, it's my time to go. And I said goodbye. And I don't know if I'll see her again. When our karma is done, we're done. I want to bring this up because I get a lot of people asking me this. A lot of people are afraid of death. There is no death. We just continue, we transition, and we continue in a different way. But then people are like, I can't imagine seeing my loved one or not seeing my loved one. I want to be with my husband again, or my daughter, my son, my dog, my cat, my wife. We do have that celebration. But once we're in consciousness, we understand that persona and that life is done. It's over. And that was the earth plane, and it doesn't exist on the other side. We're not the personality that was just on earth. And so we have choices of, we can reincarnate, we can spend time in other dimensions on the other side, or we can go into aspects of consciousness. And that's what a lot of people seem to have trouble understanding. They think they'll stay as the personality that they are. They won't, because we don't. That's the I don't want to say game. I don't want to sound flip, but that's the journey that we take. And it's one time only. We never ride the same boat twice.
So did you have any other shared death experiences?
I usually, if I'm not with someone, I will hear them. Like my best friend growing up, she got married. She lived in Oregon. She had 2 kids. She lived on a farm, and she had goats. And she loved her garden and her goats, and was devoted to her husband and her 2 children. And she died of cancer. And she came, and I didn't go out for this service, but I was in my kitchen, and I heard her say, the goats, take care of the goats. And I knew it was Sally. I could see the image of her, and I saw her with like a cabbage. And, and so I called her husband, and I said, did Sally pass? And he said, yes. And I didn't bring up the goats till maybe a year later when I called him. And he said, I was so in shock that she died, even though I knew she was sick, which is very normal for someone to transcend. It's very hard for us to, like, how do you prepare? Well, you don't. You just have to accept it in the moment it happens. And we often will go into shock. And that's what he did. And he said, I had 2 young kids there. She had 2 boys. They had 2 boys that were very young. And he said, and the farm, and he said, Sally loved the goats, but I just couldn't do it. And I said, well, she wanted them to be taken care of. So in selling them, you were taking care of them. So you did exactly what her heart's desire was. So that was a message from her as she was leaving. And I had lived with a man that he died, and he came by and he said, I know that we didn't make it all the way and I'm sorry. And then he taught he, and then I found out that he had died. And then I was with Brian, who I had lived with for a period of time in New York. And he had cancer, and he had like a brain tumor, I think it was. And all day long, there were people. He was from Germany, so he had family coming over from Germany, and he had friends that would come in and they would go. Well, they were his tribe. I was not. We loved each other. I absolutely loved this man as a friend, and just he. I think that he is one of the reasons why I was able. I was in the New York to be in the theater, even though I was starting to do healing work, and one of the reasons that I think that I was able to make it to Broadway was because of this man, his teaching me and his education and just his support and encouragement. And so everyone had left. The last person that came in from Germany came to see him. And when he left, the two interns that were there for the doctor said it's going to be like 60 seconds. 60 seconds on the dot, Brian left his body. And so these two interns took all the life support systems out and left the room. And I was with him and I saw the gold light and the gold tunnel, and I saw him start to go. And then I was told it was time for me to go. And I think it was that Brian and I didn't have a spiritual relationship, and we weren't the same tribe. And I think that he was going to be meeting with people that I didn't know about, or, my frequency is different. That's the thing about tribes. And that's the thing about respect for dimensions, is that everything is a frequency, and every dimension has its own set of frequency, and so sound and color, and it is kept as a dimension because of the laws of that frequency that sustain it. So it's like, this is why we get repelled by people sometimes. And it's because we don't have to figure it out. We just have to know they're not our tribe, and they're not our frequency, and their journey is different, because we will have different experiences based on the frequency of the tribe that we're in, if that makes sense. And so I did see Brian leave. We did have some wonderful, tender moments. He got mad at me. Oh my God, he was in a coma, right? And no one could talk to him or relate to him. Well, this woman, Anne, who was a singer, and she and Brian had gone to Japan to do a show. Oh God, it was such a great show, and she's such a marvelous singer. And so they were in Japan for like, I think 6 months or something. And so they came back. Well, she went out to work in California, and she called and she said, I've been trying to reach Brian and I can't reach him. And I said, oh, and he's in a coma and he's about to pass. And she just was in shock. And she was like, thank you so much for telling me, because I have been frantic not knowing where he is, because they loved each other so much. And, they spent 6 months in Japan together in this wonderful show. So I went in, and Brian's in his coma, and I go to his ear and I say, Brian, Anne called and she loves you so very much. And she's been looking for you. And I told her that you were in the hospital. And he grabbed my arm and pulled himself up from the bed. And he went and mouthed no. He didn't say anything. He mouthed it and then fell back and let go of my arm and turned away from me. And he didn't want anyone to know that he was ill or that he was going to transcend. But I was in the middle of these two, and Anne, I know how much Anne loved him because she was always like coming over and calling when we lived together, and I just knew that this was this tremendous, wonderful, loving relationship. And I can't deny that. And I can't tell someone if I have the truth. I can't say, oh, he's fine. He'll call you when he's back from the store. No, he was dying. And she needed to know that. And he didn't get that at the time. He didn't want people to know that he was dying. I think that was another reason why I was told once he left his body that it was time for me to go.
What final message would you like to give?
Don't be afraid of death, because we do not die, we transition. And once we understand our transition, when we leave our physical body, the limitations our body and mind give us, we have complete understanding and awareness and the deep spiritual love that we feel on the other side. And so it's easy to go on in our path, in our world. And we do see our loved ones again. We do. And we do see them whether they're a part of our tribe or not. You know, we do see on the other side, we can see people that aren't our tribe, but we do see them again. So never worry about not seeing your husband, your son, your wife, your dog or cat. They're there.
This has been the A.J. Parr Spiritual Journalist Podcast. Please like, share, and subscribe.